During this time of uncertainty, I found myself seeking comfort in some traditionally female activities. I can understand that during a time of crisis, a person would want to seek out some power and control over their own life. So, I'm feeling especially connected to the women of some film adaptations of Shakespeare who are chronically trapped inside a world that rarely gives them the option to be strong. Let's talk about forcing women who want to be respected to take on traditionally masculine roles, and then villainizing and punishing them for it. Let's talk Lady Macbeth. Now, Lady Macbeth is not the only example, but she is a great jumping-off point. Lady Macbeth is power-hungry, ambitious, and ruthless.
And live a coward in thine own esteem. Letting I dare not wait upon I would, like the poor cat in the adage.
Ultimately, she is punished for her crimes, and so is Macbeth. But throughout the play, she's seen as an important catalyst and the treacherous manipulator who practically forced Macbeth's hand into murdering King Duncan, and then is driven mad by the guilt of her actions. In Vishal Bhardwaj's 2004 Macbeth, the male gaze is heavily present and suffocating on Nimi, the Lady Macbeth character, as she is one of the two consistent female characters in the film who are surrounded by powerful men in Islamic Mumbai that control everything around them, including the women. However, unlike Lady Macbeth, the audience is more inclined to empathize with and root for Nimi because she is trapped in an unhappy relationship with the elderly King Duncan character. The relationship between Nimi and Macbeth is forbidden, and her manipulation is framed as almost justified because she is motivated by love and fear and disgust of being forced into a relationship with a powerful man she doesn't care about. In the end, her punishment, and what leads to her madness and death, is her pregnancy with Jahangir's child after she and Macbeth have murdered him. Her punishment is fulfilling society's role for her that she didn't want, taking away any masculine power or influence she had, and her life being completely taken out of her control. In Throne of Blood, Asaji is Lady Macbeth, but she is portrayed as particularly unsympathetic, and as practically a statue and ornament of the film. She is manipulative and changes the course of events, but her role as another example of the almost sole female character in the film is uniquely trapped from the restrictive clothes she wears to the constant position of her sitting whenever she is framed. Either way, when both women use whatever opportunity or ability they have to try and be something other than the object of the male gaze they are forced into, and are inevitably punished and told by the world to punish themselves for trying to participate in society like a man. As stated in the paper, The Femme Fatale Lady Macbeth and the Misogynistic Macbeth by Hiria Al-Razna, Lady Macbeth's dilemma, in a nutshell, is that she is a disastrous wife to urge her husband to kill the king, and she is a faint-hearted woman to feel guilty and let the pang of conscience destroy her mind. Thus, Lady Macbeth ends up marginalized, the same as her Renaissance counterparts.
Hi, I'm Paul Castle.
My dad and Shakespeare expert.
Women can take a role in Shakespeare and be very performative about it, so you can sort of comment on it, what we would say in the theater trade, a sort of Brechtian approach, sort of a distancing kind of thing where we're performing and then commenting on the playing. It's a pretty tricky line to walk, but I think it can be done.
It is not only Shakespeare's tragedies that treat and punish women in this way. In The Taming of the Shrew, the female lead, Katharina, is smart, interesting, and in many ways a precursor to some of the Shakespearean heroines who get some form of what passed for equality at the time.
Use you like a fool! And call me a novice with a three-legged stool!
Katharina is understandably angry and violent because, similarly to Lady Macbeth, she is trapped in a world where she has no agency. She is forcibly married to Petruchio, a man only interested in her money, and he starves her and deprives her of sleep and clothing until she becomes the agreeable, obedient wife that he wants her to be. The 1967 film adaptation, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, does not stray too far from the source material, but adds Taylor's Kate giving a knowing glance at the end of the film to show that this is all in good fun and that the antics will continue. This may have convinced 1967 audience that there was any sort of equality in the abusive relationship, but this was still several centuries after the play was written, and people continued to misread this abuse and punishment of a woman for wanting independence as playful will-they, won't-they banter. Films that contextualize this kind of unhealthy and abusive relationship in the wrong way raise young men and women to think that this kind of treatment is okay, and they will model their own relationships after it. In Gil Junger's 1999 10 Things I Hate About You, the familiar story is given a much more modern and feminist twist, and the Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger characters seem to be on a more equal footing. However, in the end, Stiles simply forgives and submits to being with a man who has been lying to her for months. She is forced to soften and give up her abrasive and unfeminine ways so that she can be with Heath Ledger, and all it took to take down her walls and deal with her evolving identity was the attention of a man.
You're so
charming. Wholesome.
unwelcome.
Additionally, in 10 Things I Hate About You, we can see another pitfall of the media maker sending the wrong message to the audience. In the video essay Stalking for Love by the YouTube channel Pop Culture Detective, the author explores how damaging these images of manipulation of women in film can be. Although Ledger's actions in the film may be innocent in context, they still carry a manipulative undertone, and young men and women watching the film could misinterpret the difference between giving a romantic gesture to a consenting partner and overstepping and ignoring the boundaries of someone who is not interested. Often, we find our Shakespearean leading ladies dressing in drag to protect themselves and their virtue from the male gaze, like in the adaptation of Twelfth Night, She's the Man, and the fictionalized history of Shakespeare in Love. In the play Twelfth Night, Viola dresses as a man out of her fear of being raped by the men in a kingdom she was shipwrecked on. Conversely, both the Viola in She's the Man and Shakespeare in Love changed the reason to suit a more contemporary audience, so that both women dress as men to go after the career they want, whether it be soccer or acting. It is a happy accident in the films that they get swept away by the men who have no idea that they are women. Although in the end all is revealed and there is a happy heteronormative ending, the heavy queer undertones are rarely acknowledged. The love interests initially were attracted to the women when they believed them to be men, and instead of acting on this attraction, it causes them to become more aggressive and competitive with the incarnations of Viola because they don't understand their attraction and are afraid of it. So, instead of acting on the sex drive that they feel, they turn instead to their death drive and challenge the other women they perceive as men to proving who is superior and will reproduce because they are terrified that if they are attracted to a man, it means that they won't. This can also be read as the Shakespearean unawareness of trans individuals and misunderstanding of what it means to be cisgender. Sir Kemp states in his paper, "In that dimension grossly clad, transgender rhetoric, representation, and Shakespeare," Sebastian's inability to recognize Viola as Viola is rooted in his inability to believe she is not a man. He sublimates any doubt about gender to a doubt about identity. At the level of cognition, this cedes ontological and intimate knowledge of a person to the knowledge of their gender, seeming to suggest Sebastian knows his own sister less than he imagines he knows this stranger's genitals. And although trans representation was not a topic in Elizabethan England, the films that are based on these plays have the responsibility to recognize the issues of gender identity at work in the text. Obviously, women dressing as men did not begin with Shakespeare, but we can continue to see his influence on all manners of pop culture outside of film. In Taylor Swift's music videos from Love Story to The Man. In Love Story, she is the Juliet character, content in her stereotypically female role and ending happily with a marriage and fulfillment of societal expectations. However, in her later video, The Man, Swift explores her own fictionalized male counterpart and how the qualities that people dislike about her because she is a woman would be celebrated and embraced if she was a man. These are the struggles that all the women in these films and plays face, and this influence can be seen on Swift's work, and other women who grew up being exposed to media that told them to reject any masculine identity they feel in order to embrace accepted performance of femininity. Thanks for watching.